This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Well, joining us today is Sean Wade, the CEO of Power Metal Resources. Thank you very much for joining us today. Sean, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Mark. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know you're fresh off a plane from your trip to the States. We'll talk about that in a moment, but some news, may as well catch up on that from this morning. That's, of course, regarding the disposal of the Kavango Resources share. So that's the entire share line that Pow had in the portfolio that you've disposed of and raised a significant amount of cash. So really, if I can just get a comment on you as to why that decision was made and how the funds realised will be used.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's important to mention that, yes, we have sold all of our shares. That's quite right, 69.5 million shares, but we are retaining our warrants. So we've got warrants at both 4.25p and 5.5p. And we also have a royalty over the Kalahari Copper Belt and Ditau Camp project. So we will retain some participation, hopefully, and as I said in the comment, this bears no reflection on Kavango, and it's a great company with some fantastic assets, and I'm sure they're going to do extremely well. For us, this is about being able to really fulfill in a sense the last piece of the business model. As we talk about a lot, we explore. And then we crystallize, and then monetizing that value at the end of the process is key. And obviously, I know that a number of shareholders do worry a lot about dilution, and it is a very important issue. And I do take on board the feedback on that. And whilst obviously we would never rule out raising fresh equity if we had the right opportunities or the right strategic opportunities, clearly where we can avoid dilution for shareholders, then we should take it, and this is the case here. So this is a bit more than £500,000. It's a good amount of money. It adds to an already pretty decent cash balance, and that's very important when you consider the point of the cycle we're at. We're all extremely optimistic that the conditions are going to improve, hopefully in the first quarter of next year. But going to the market for fresh equity, with the price down here would be crazy, really. So, making sure that we've got sufficient cash balances for what we want to do, not just running the business, but for our exploration activities is really important. So you ask, what about the use of proceeds? I mean, look, this is designed for high impact exploration opportunities. This is not just simply to, for ordinary sort of working capital, although obviously, some of it will no doubt be for that. But really the idea is we create the maximum amount of impact we can with our exploration activity. So we're looking forward to updating on exactly what those plans are in due course. But I think people have talked about Malopo obviously, and we've said that that's something we're looking at doing. So I'm sure we'll be able to come back on in the not too distant future to give specifics on how we're going to deploy that capital.
Okay, well, high impact exploration opportunities. So yes, I look forward to seeing that announcement of how you're going to deploy those funds in the best possible way. But I do just want to catch up on where you were last week. You were over in the United States. I think you're not long off an airplane actually today. So to tell us where you were, why you were there, and what you wanted to get out of the conference that you were attending.
Yeah, so we've been in New Orleans, and it's the New Orleans Investment Conference. It's been running for nearly 50 years, and it's a very well-established investor conference. It's not 100% specific to mining, although it is very well oriented towards it, because it's organised by a man called Brian London, who people will know has a very long-standing mining background. Rick Rule was there, as we tweeted, and of course a lot of very familiar faces to us. Already, so we saw a lot of companies, obviously that we know, but also a lot of investors, that we'd met at the previous conference that we went to with Rick in July. So the idea, as usual, is to set up a booth and engage directly with investors, tell them the power metal story. I also had a chance to present sort of more formally at the podium with slides and so on, which that was live streamed and obviously will be available on catch up, and hopefully we'll be able to get that bit of media and distribute it ourselves. So it was a very, very good, very, very well attended, very sort of high energy, high impact sort of conference where there were a lot of, I would say, pretty serious high net worth people. So hopefully, we've had a good, we did get a good opportunity to get a message across. Hopefully that will translate into people buying our shares.
Well, I'm picking up on a bit of a common theme here with regards to power and sort of attracting US investors. You talked there about speaking to a number of serious high net worth people there. And of course, you attended the Rick Rule conference earlier in the year. So is this a focus now of power to attract the US investors? Because of course, you've not just got US projects, the projects are all around the world, but is it something that you're focusing efforts on to try and attract higher net worth or just US investors in general?
Well, yes, we are, is a straight answer. I mean, look, I think that, the most obvious thing to say is that, in order to deliver returns for shareholders through the share price, we've got to find a new audience and new people to buy the shares. I mean, that's obviously ultimately what drives share prices. And the advantage of talking to US investors is because obviously Rick has a huge following in the investment community in the US. And, effectively, we're pre-vetted by him as it's well known that he's our largest individual shareholder. So, I was talking to one gentleman, for example, who, we told him the story, obviously, and, took him through all of the messages. And he said, well, look, if it's good enough for Rick Rule, it's good enough for me. So, I'm happy to go and buy some shares, which obviously is great and what we're looking for. But I think, we have this opportunity through his network, through the influencers that he's put us in touch with. We asked him, we had a bit of a chat with him and talked about sort of communication strategy, and he's introducing us to a number of people that can really help sort of multiply the message, if you like, sort of force multiplier effect and get our story out there. And that's key. And now, what it doesn't mean that we're going to be flying backwards and forwards to the US. I mean, obviously that's it's pretty expensive. So we're limiting the amount of time we physically spend at these things. But I think, going forward, looking at the sort of influencer route and media and distributing our message via those channels where, you can be getting, thousands and thousands of views and so on for messages, is obviously worth doing. So there were a lot of people there that we had met previously. And I think, people who have got experience in investor relations, for example, will know that, it takes time. The first time you meet somebody, they've never heard of you. Second time, they might remember you and have some questions. The third time, they're probably more familiar and are able to make an investment decision. So, it's a process, although we do know that we already have gained a lot of shareholders in the US because they come up and tell me, and it was nice to see lots of people that we recognize. So, it is an iterative process, and we are carrying on with it. But of course, we're taking our message wherever we can. And,
okay.
Any group of investors, obviously, an area which I'm very interested in getting into.
And what is that message then? What is it you were saying to these US investors, and of course London investors, any investors really, any shareholders, potential shareholders in power? What is the message you're giving people regards getting a good return on their investment, given of course that the pullback in the share price recently, and where the focus is going to be, the focus of efforts?
Yeah, well, I think we've talked a lot about, this kind of merchant banking model and resources, and, the US investors really understand that. It's something that they're very familiar with. Rick Rule, for example, made his money doing exactly that. So, they're very comfortable with the idea of, a portfolio of projects where essentially the risk is diversified amongst a group of projects. So we're trying to minimize the risk to individual projects, individual commodities, individual geographies, but maximizing potential returns through retaining high levels of ownership in the vehicles as they IPO. So that was well understood. But also fundamentally at heart, we're an explorer. Everybody knows that. We talked at the top about high impact exploration activities, and and that is what the core of the business is. And again, that's well understood that all of the dynamics relating to the energy transition, the need for critical minerals, uranium, for example, is very well understood in the US. All of those macro drivers are very much in focus in the US market as they are here. So there's no real sort of change really to what we're saying. I mean, we put a little bit of emphasis on the North American operations. Obviously, you've got gold and metal. We've obviously got the Athabasca portfolio in Canada, but US investors, mining investors, very comfortable with Australia, very comfortable with Africa, and also very excited about the opportunity in Saudi Arabia and Oman, which, as we've said before, is something we want to be talking a lot more about as we hopefully start picking up licenses there and relationships and so on we're certain will deliver a lot of value.
Okay. Well, you talk there, of course, being about the explorer. We all know Power's got a very wide portfolio of projects across the world. But what do you think could perhaps be a catalyst event that would really solidify the valuation there of Power? Almost put a line under a line of support under the share price.
Yes, I mean, look, it's a tricky one to answer that because we've done a lot, I think, recently, where we would ordinarily or in normalized conditions would have been very, very positive for the share price. I mean, we've made some fantastic strides in Canada in this exploration season. We've talked about the helium anomaly at Perch River, for example. That would ordinarily have been a real winner. We've cleared up a seller in the stock. The directors have been buying. We brought cash in through Kavango. There's been all sorts of corporate activity and progress made across the business. But these markets remain very soft, and I don't know whether people are short of the stock or anything like that. But I would say that there are technical aspects to share trading all the time, and we also get positive feedback, but we also get negative feedback. So and these are in the public domain. So it's some of it's helpful, some of it's not helpful. But I think a lot of the messages from the conference were there is a generally very difficult period, or we're enduring a very difficult period, and that's got a lot to do with available liquidity and the ability of investors to invest. And I think that one of the things that really came out was talk about essentially the peak of the interest rate cycle in the US could genuinely be a big catalyst for the sector improving overall, because you're going to see a good run in gold. We're pretty certain about that, but these other critical minerals, uranium, copper, etc., that critical for the transition, I think you're going to see big moves in those as well. We already have, obviously, in uranium. So there is a positive feel towards commodity markets, commodity prices, but we just need a little bit more capital to loosen up the actual stock markets themselves and for people to really want to invest again. So I'm hopeful that we just carry on doing what we're doing. We're delivering news. We're going to allocate this cash to some exploration. We're going to hopefully produce some really good results, and I hope that people will come on board. I mean, I think it's been an extremely difficult period, and I'm very conscious that a lot of shareholders are underwater, and we want to do something about that. But as I've said a few times, if we could control it, obviously we would. All we can do is all of the things that we've set out, deliver on those objectives, and I do believe ultimately when the markets turn, the share price will do very well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Just a final thought, and just to run up to Christmas in terms of news flow, I guess we can expect to hear some of the plans for exploration and the use of those funds. Is that fair to say? And then maybe some news from UAE, but also from that helium anomaly.
Yes, that's right. Well, I think I believe that there's more information on Perch River specifically, which we're analysing at the moment. So that is definitely something that's going to come. UAE, you mentioned, we're undertaking a financing round at the moment. That's going extremely well, and I think we're going to close that. I would have thought pretty soon, and then we'll move straight into the IPO period. So that's going very well. We'll definitely be talking about that. And yes, we're really, really excited about being able to give our drilling programs and exploration plans for early next year, which we'll be doing, very soon. So yeah, look, I mean, we generate a lot of news, as you know, and that's not going to stop. I mean, I know there's a lot that I no doubt be speaking about, certainly this side of Christmas.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Sean Wade, CEO of Power Metal Resources.
Thanks, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.